Hey, have you been wanting to give us money in exchange for goods? Well, you're so lucky because now you can. We have re-released our They's Aliens merchandise in honor of the government telling us that there are aliens in order to distract us from whatever horrible evil they're causing in the world right now. Pick it up at wehaveconcerns. Pick it up at wehaveconcernstore.com.
You know, correlation is not causation, but also like maybe the Minions ruined everything.
This is We Have Concerns. Hi, Jeff Canada.
Hi, Anthony Carboni.
Hello, concerned citizens.
Anthony, you know that our listeners are the smartest, are the best, have the best personality, the most intelligent.
Mm-hmm. At first, I was going to say, when you said, Anthony, you know, I was going to be like, don't you presume what I know and don't know. But you're right. I do know this.
Yeah. They have the best personality. They're charming. They're delightful. They're just anyone who has the good taste enough to download this program and put it on their listening device of choice. Just, we know, has high intelligence, great personality.
Yeah, but probably doesn't like a Minions movie.
Probably doesn't
Never
like
watched a Minions,
movie.
or if they have watched a Minions, was like, I can't believe I watched that Minions.
Yeah.
Give me that 90 minutes of my life back. God. I've never been so angry with you, the Lord.
But what indeed does great intelligence and sparkling personality mean for your life? What does it mean? For years, nay decades, nay centuries, science has tackled this very question. What does it mean? What is the correlations that we can draw between people with high intelligence and great personalities versus the other, what we like to call We Have Concerns listeners?
Yeah, the grossies.
The grossies.
The grossies who don't listen to this show is what we call them.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. We have ideas about what it means to be intelligent and what that means in terms of like people's personality and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oftentimes, I think the stereotype is, absent-minded professor, kind of like super intelligent, but possibly socially awkward, or
Peter Parker's room is messy because it's a sign of genius. Aunt May says
exactly. So. My grandfather used to have a clean desk as the sign of a sick mind.
Yeah.
Little sign on his desk.
But we also I think this is interesting because it also, I think throughout history, it's also a thing that we've used to excuse poor behaviors and things like that as well. Like I just read this book, Monsters, by Claire Dederer. She used to be the head critic of the Seattle Times, and now she's a film professor and a film theory professor. And she was talking about the idea of the moody, put upon, angry genius, right? Like you've got the enfant terrible. You've got to let them work the way they work because that's the way genius works. And it's like, well, is that true? Do you have to be shitty to be a genius?
We're all going to see the Oppenheimer, right? Mm-hmm. We're all watching the Oppenheimer.
I still didn't go see the Oppenheimer.
Most of us are going to see the Oppenheimer.
I don't know. It's just not, I don't know.
Almost all of us. Everybody except Anthony has seen Oppenheimer.
Look, I get it. I want to see, nobody's shot a movie on that big a film before. Nobody's looked at that huge a film stock and went, I'm going to run all of this through my cameras. Not just a scene.
Yeah.
I'm going to run the biggest film through the biggest cameras that there's ever been. It's like, oh, you gonna do
just faces.
What are you gonna do with it? Another Batman? You gonna do another action-packed time travel movie that makes us think about the universe?
No, sir. I'm gonna shoot a man's face real close and project it larger than anyone has ever seen a face before.
What if I took a historical drama that's mostly talking and government, and I said, shoot it bigger. shoot it larger.
What if that scene where we're all sitting down around a table and having a conversation, but it was the size of a 16-story building? What about that?
I mean, and my answer to that is, yeah, what about it, dude? Yeah, man, what about it? But that's the thing, right? Is Christopher Nolan, we know, is a genius, and we've heard these stories about the way we talk about this a lot. And I mean, you I'm sure talk about it tons with your pals on the Slash Film Cast, where we. These directors who get really huge, these auteurs, it's like, well, you got to give them what they want. If he wants to build the world's biggest gimbal at the bottom of the LA River, you got to let him do it, because that's how he makes his film. But then there's also stories of like, and it's not even stories of big famous people. We all kind of maybe know people like this, where you work at an office and there's like one person at the office where you just don't bug them when they're doing their thing. Because if you bug them when they're doing their thing, it throws them off. And no one does the spreadsheet better than Carl does the spreadsheet.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, you're brilliant, but standoffish, don't have a great personality, hard to relate to. And honestly, the inverse stereotype is also common.
Yeah. Oh, if you're friendly, you're dumb, right?
Yeah, the bubbly airhead, right? You have the great personality, but man, they're not too bright, right?
Yeah. I've always I've always sort of thought like, yeah, there are connections here between personality and intelligence. There must be, right? But I also have thought that, boy, we're kind of just using it to be assholes, right? Like the idea that people who are happy, bubbly, joyful, those traits have always been connected to negative things, in our culture, at least in American culture, where it's just like, oh, they're so joyful and happy and like, and big, their personality. Oh, they must be dumb, or worse. It's been used to push some like stereotypes about different kinds of people, which I really don't enjoy. But I do think like there must be some connection.
I like to break that entire stereotype by being both pretty dumb and have a terrible personality.
Same. So, I like to just be, I like to just look as though there's a dark cloud of genius over me. But in reality,
but then not be very bright.
Yeah, it is a dark cloud of stupidity that comes rolling in from the angry and tumultuous sea of ineptitude, and
arrogant and stupid. That's right. What I like to be.
That's right. Yeah. I like to be full of myself, and that self is an idiot,
full but empty. That's what we like. Well, there is a new study that is in the process of being released, a massive study that has taken 14 years, I believe, to put together. We talk, a lot about, we have on this podcast many times talked a lot about big data and how big data is kind of changing the world. And obviously, everybody talks about, the use of big data to influence purchasing and to kind of move people. Here is a study that is leveraging big data in a completely different way. This is a pretty fascinating study. There are two scientists that led this effort, Kevin Stanek and Denise Wuns. They are researchers at the Gilead Sciences Institute, and they spent many years and used the resources of, they said, hundreds of research assistants and volunteers to comb the records of the entire history of scientific study and analysis to find. They literally went through 1,300 studies
to figure out why people find the Minions funny.
They're just curious about how it could be possible.
Come outside, Minions fans. We just want to talk.
No, they took 1,300 studies from over 50 countries. That included over 2 million participants. These are studies, literally all the data they could find in the world. So they didn't restrict it to specific languages. They went, like I said, 50 different countries, all kinds of different languages. They did research by the military and private businesses.
The way you're explaining this, Jeff, I'm picturing, I'm seeing number one, 80s stock footage of a stock trading floor, cut to like a 60s NASA mission control, cut to like some dude in a parka ice climbing to the top of a mountain to talk to three people. Like the way you're explaining this, it's like the entire world came together in a flurry of activity, Jeff. They were checking old microfilm. They were using the Christopher Nolan IMAX. They were using giant film stocks and computers and hard drives and those hard drives that have reel-to-reels and they've got blinky lights.
Yeah, those ones. They used them. They've literally found studies that hadn't been published. They found
those are the best studies. You want to use those ones.
They literally, like they said, they found research that sat dormant on hard drives for decades.
And it was in an ancient temple that was hidden. And you could only find the way into the light that hid these, to the temple that hid these hard drives like once a day.
There was that one hard drive they had to get by like lowering themselves slowly into the room, but they couldn't touch any of the walls. So they had to stay completely horizontal.
And then one of them had to like do like one of the scientists had to do like a cool crawl over a laser. And then like their well-toned butt had to go right under the laser.
Yeah.
And it was like tense because they're going to hit the laser and that's a problem. But also it was like a little sexy. It was also like a little sexy.
And they couldn't have done any of that without dozens and dozens of research assistants and sexy butts.
That's right. You know? That's right. That's sexy. Listen, the researchers on this longitudinal study had the most latitudinal asses you've ever seen.
Yeah.
They were thick with 3 C's, these research assistants. Jeff, so all of this data, they were looking at all of this data, and these are studies of what? Just these are intelligence studies, these are emotional studies. What are these?
All of the above. They found literally, it's a wild thing. I read their presentation. They've published their meta-analysis of all this data.
Ew, you read the source material? Gross.
I read the source material, baby.
Ew, you read the actual paper? Gross.
It's dense.
You're a nerd.
I am. Guilty as charged. Dumb, not great personality, but also obsessive about reading. Mm-hmm. It's delightful.
It's a shame, really. It's a shame because you'd think the obsessiveness about reading would help the intelligence at all, and it just doesn't.
No. I just read analysis of the Minions movies.
I just read analysis of television shows I don't watch.
Yeah, I like to
read about people hate watching The Idol. I'm never going to watch The Idol.
Movies that I don't watch along with.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch any of those films. I have a feeling I'm going to hate that movie. Let's read about how much you hate that movie. Let's hate it together.
Yeah. That's how Anthony has enjoyed Oppenheimer so far.
And all the Minions.
Anyway, there is a lot of detail here as to the methodology of how they picked studies. Like, for example, they didn't pick any study that primarily focused on participants below the age of 12. Okay. They didn't, they selected any study that drew a correlation between intelligence and behavior or personality and behavior. So it didn't matter how small or how big the study was. They threw it all onto the pile, and the methodology is pretty wild. They spent years and years like cross-referencing. They would have multiple different people look at the study and see if they drew the same conclusions, and so that they wouldn't just have one person's like, oh, that's how I think that study applies to our project. They cross-reference it with multiple people. It's very big. Like I said, 14 years figuring out how to synthesize all of this massive amount of data.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example. It said, for inclusion in the current meta-analysis, studies had to provide at least one observed correlation coefficient between a personality trait and a cognitive ability, as well as an associated sample size. So for 673 of these studies, we spent 1 year attempting to individually contact the authors and obtain the raw data for usable statistics. This tactic converted 100 unusable materials to information that could be included. I mean, it was a huge effort to like get this data, synthesize it, and create some kind of giant roadmap, but that correlates personality and intelligence with other traits. And they defined personality and intelligence in very interesting ways, I think. So personality, they say, describes how someone generally thinks, feels, and behaves.
Right.
But they further qualify it as being made up of 5 major independent traits.
Yeah, the five big ones, the 5 big traits.
Yeah. This is extroversion, neuroticism, conscientiousness, openness, and agreeableness.
I'll tell you what, I score low on all of those except one. Can you guess which?
Extroversion.
Yeah, it's extroversion. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'll say extroversion. No, it's neuroticism.
Yeah. The neuroticism, yeah. But those big 5 also have several aspects and facets that make, that contribute to them, like depression and suspiciousness for neuroticism, politeness and empathy for agreeableness, etc. So you're not just neurotic, you also have depression and suspiciousness up in there.
Well, okay. So, but that's what's interesting about the big 5, right? Is all of the different ways they can be expressed. And that's one of the reasons why when people say, oh, if you're an extrovert, you're probably not as intelligent, right? You're socially active and you want to be out there and make it but you're probably not as intelligent because you're out there doing social things. And it's like extroversion, there's a reason they call them the big 5. Like these are the most general areas of personality. And that's one of the reasons that I've always thought that our ideas about the connection to intelligence and personality have to be partially true, but also really off, because those 5 big traits are too big to try to associate with anything,
Right. So by breaking it down into those aspects and facets, they're able to further parse all these studies, right? So they can apply studies that might not be speaking specifically to, conscientiousness or neuroticism or whatever, but actually apply them, because then these further refined traits that a study might be talking about could be applied, upstream, if you get my drift.
Right.
And so, and I misspoke earlier. It really is trying to correlate personality and intelligence. Is there a correlation? If you are intelligent, are you more likely to have this kind of personality? If you have this kind of personality, does it describe your level of intelligence?
Right.
Now, we should just define intelligence as well, because they defined intelligence in 2 major ways. Acquired knowledge, which they also call invested abilities. This is skills and knowledge that you learn, right? Acquired skills. These are, you can weld, you're intelligent because you've gained a skill.
Right.
And then the non-invested knowledge, these are cognitive abilities, that aren't acquired. So these are, sort of innate intellectual prowess, like, innate abilities, basically.
Right. Things like your natural like memory, your ability for memory, your
pattern
ability
recognition.
Yes. All that stuff.
Working memory. Yes.
So this is interesting because some of that stuff is considered to be genetic as well. So, when you're saying like these innate abilities, like these are considered, sure, there's a lot about how you're raised and there's a lot about your environment, but some of these things are genetic. And so what I think is interesting is we're getting into a place now where this study could be saying that personality is genetic to a certain extent.
Well, I don't think that they can. What has happened is they have all this data and they can create these correlations. There's no
causation yet.
Causation. There's no description. It's just pointing out there are discernible relationships between personality and intelligence. There are these things over a huge data set. 2 million human beings studied in various ways over many, many years across many, many countries and different languages lead to these sort of big relationships between.
Do the personality traits make these people more intelligent? Does the intelligence make these people have these personality traits, or is there some other connection between the two that we are not seeing yet?
The why they haven't even approached yet, right? This is just like, look at the connections that we can draw from the data. We don't know the whys. The whys is a completely different issue. Yeah. But we can tell you.
We just got back from the jungle where trying to get this hard drive nearly killed me.
Yes.
So like if you want the why yet, like
you should have seen me running from the giant circular boulder.
That's right. There was a huge pie graph.
So fast.
There was a huge pie chart and it was just coming after me.
The wild thing is you can actually get on this website. I will put the link in the show notes. They actually released an interactive there it is. You can, but what the hell am I looking at? What is that?
So they released what they're calling the interactive tool that shows this stuff. And it's it is a chart that is showing connections between things. And here's what I'll tell you. It's a plate of spaghetti.
It looks like a ball of yarn. Or a plate of spaghetti.
It's like all these scientists got together with 1,300 studies worth of information and decided, fuck it, we're just going to make a dream catcher. and that's where memory and intelligence comes from, is the dreams, because this is like
it's intense. It's intense. I was like, intense. Oh, cool. Now, I'm going to click on this. I'll be able to relate. I'll be able to explain to Anthony all these cool. No. Whoop.
Now I'll say they're all around in a circle. If you're one of our video patrons, number one, thank you. Patreon.com/wehaveconcerns. But number two, you can see this. But if you're not, I'll try to explain it to you. It's a circle, and half of the circle is in different colors around the edges of it, and those edges all represent different personality, and then the other half of the circle is black and white, and I think that's intelligence, and then everything's connected through, like, I don't know, like you're trying to play Among Us and rewire the console, and and if you highlight one of these things, like if I highlight agreeableness with my mouse over here, it does show me all of the connections they found between agreeableness and the other side of the circle, and the rest of the spaghetti disappears. It's bad. I don't know how you're supposed to like. I don't know if you're supposed to be able to like look at multiple things or glean like multiple types of data or synthesize it here, but it's really wild. Some of these things on the one of the things on the intelligence side is just called G. It's just like if you're a real G, this is what your personality is like.
If you're an OG,
evidently. If you're one of the old heads, this is your personality. If you've been around since back in the day, but I don't know what that means.
The thing is, it took these folks 14 years, and this was the best graph they came up with to express it.
Here's the thing, after 14 years. Intense. Here's what I'm going to tell you. You ever worked on something for real long, and you've gotten to the point where you've worked on it for so long, it just doesn't make sense to you anymore? Yes. Imagine that times 14 years. And at the end of the 14 years, it's the night before the science fair. You've been working your ass off. You're not even good at science. I'm not saying these people aren't good at science. I'm just making an analogy. You're not even good at science. Maybe you spent too much time like playing video games. Maybe a new Zelda came out right around the time of the science fair, and you fucked up and you didn't spend enough time, and you're like, oh shit, it's due tomorrow. I bought one of those big project boards that folds into 3. I need a visual. I'll just draw something right now. This is what it is. Let me tell you something. 14 years, 1,300 sources of information, and I really do feel like they fumbled it at the point where they have to draw a graph. Super important study.
It is intense, man.
Listen, I look at this graph and I do say to myself, these people had a lot of data. I can tell.
Yeah. Oh, it conveys the breadth of the data very well.
Oh, please.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. If you were trying to make a chart to just show me that you worked hard and there was a lot of data that you worked on, this is the chart. But here's the thing about chart. Chart got to be readable. Chart got to make sense.
I honestly think just putting in a circle was the bad idea. The circle part of it is the worst part.
The circle's rough.
All the lines bend and are all very confusing.
So here's the thing. If you want to see how one of these traits connects to different factors of intelligence, or if you want to see how one of these factors of intelligence connects to personality traits, this is a great tool to do it. But if you want to compare any of this data at all, using the interactive tool, if you're like, well, I really want to see how this compares, I want to see how agreeableness and neuroticism connect to different personality traits, because I want to know what the similarities there are, or I want to know what the similarities like. Maybe there's some surprising connections between extroversion and withdrawal that I'm not seeing. You know, what are those two opposites have in common? Fuck you. You can't know. There's no way for you to know.
No, this chart.
Get absolutely wrecked. Our interactive tool simply does not allow you to interact with more than one part of the study at a time. We are not web developers. We're researchers.
You know how when you're 6 and you're in school and you have to draw the lines between, the color and the object, or like, how have 2 lists of words and you have to connect the ones that worksheet you get for homework where you have to draw the line between the thing. You know how those words are never in a circle?
Yeah.
There's a reason that they're not in a circle, because it's confusing as all fuck.
Yeah, that's the part. Like, listen, when you get the little McDonald's activity sheet, you draw the connecting lines on one, and then the next one is the maze. You don't put the maze and the connecting lines together.
That's what they did. They made this and the maze at the same time. And I honestly think there might be a word jumble in there too. I
actually just finished it like a Sudoku. And there were no numbers on it whatsoever. And so I don't know how that came to be. But if you look beyond this, if you look beyond this web tool though, Jeff, if you say to yourself, well, fuck me for trying to look at this myself. Yeah. What do they say they found?
There's some really fascinating actual correlations that they came to here. The biggest one, let me ask you this. What would you say is the personality trait that is most reliably associated with intelligence? This is the one.
So if I'm saying out of the big 5,
one trait, and that if you have that one trait, odds are, above all others, you're probably going to be a pretty intelligent person.
Out of the big 5, I would say openness.
That's exactly right.
I would say openness. You cannot synthesize information unless you are open to new ideas.
Openness is the only personality trait linking it directly to intelligence reliably. So this is strongly correlated with general mental ability, openness, your willingness to engage with new ideas and experiences. And I think that's pretty awesome to see it written out like that.
I've seen this in life. Have you ever met or worked with or, just interacted with one of those people where everybody's like, that's a smart person. You're about to meet one of the smartest people you've ever met. And you meet them and you're like, oh, they're not smart. They're just correcting everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're just correcting everybody based on things that they believe they know.
Right.
But it comes off as intelligence. That's why I think this study is so fascinating, because the actual most brilliant people I've ever met, and this is how I know I am not a brilliant person and I will never be a brilliant person. If you've ever had a conversation with a really brilliant person, they let you do a lot of the talking.
Yeah, they listen.
They listen very actively.
Yes.
And instead of like correcting or chiming in with what they think, they'll give you like just a question, or that's interesting, or well, how do you feel about this then, without like sounding like debating. Like none of their questions ever sound like they're trying to debate or that they have a conclusion in mind already. They're just able to sit back and sometimes I've watched brilliant people sit back and listen to like the dumbest, angriest people and just take it all in. And I'm just like, oh, they're learning at all times. They're learning at all times.
This is why I seek out intelligent people to speak to, because I love just prattling on.
Well, yeah. Well, sorry, asshole. You found another person who does the same thing. And now we're both
that's called a podcast.
That's called the White Guy Podcast. Have you ever heard one? This is one of them.
You're listening to one now. Anyway, so, I think that's very encouraging to say, if you meet open people, open-mindedness is intelligence. Mm-hmm. They are directly correlated. And I think that's a beautiful thing to see.
And I want to say that there's a difference between open-mindedness and like, you can tell when somebody is exhibiting fake open-mindedness.
Right. Oh, I will let you say your thing so that I can now tell you how wrong you are. Yeah.
Oh, a lot of these people are media pundits these days.
Yeah.
Who will who are like, I will now let you make your point in order to destroy it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, openness. Yeah. I bet that's, so that makes sense.
Another personality trait that is correlated positively with intelligence overall is conscientiousness, which is they define as a measure of self-regulation and orderliness. So
okay, so the messy desk, not necessarily the sign of a brilliant mind.
Exactly. Although they say there are some facets of conscientiousness that correlate with lower cognitive abilities, and that is cautiousness and routine seeking.
Okay, this is fascinating to me because I'm an ADHD boy. Always have been. I'm on many medications right now, and one of the things that I'm always told is I have to try to stick to routines, and I have to try to figure out how to make routines fit into my life, and also how to get rid of my impulsive behavior. And I'm not going to say that ADHD people are intelligent or more intelligent than anybody else, but I will say that when I meet ADHD people who are intelligent, I can immediately tell both things at once. I'm like, oh, you're smart and you have ADHD. Because because we all have, I think, a certain amount of intelligence or a certain personality. Like we're saying, these are connected to certain traits that I can see. Right. I think we're most able to recognize the personality traits that we have. And so I'm like, oh, you're a pretty smart person who has ADHD. I know you already. I get you. And it's because we have that impulsiveness and we cannot do routine.
Well, I think it's interesting to me because I think I seek routine. I find some pleasure in knowing what I have to do each day.
Yeah, because you're dumb as hell.
I'm dumb as hell. But also I think that relates back to the open-mindedness thing, right? Because being open to not having a routine, having a mind that is welcoming new exposure to new things means I don't need to be stuck in my rut every day. I don't have to wake up and expect the same things over and over. And so I think that really does make sense to me, that openness correlates to high intelligence, and then some routine seeking.
It's going with the flow, right? It's being able to roll with the punches. It's being able to be adapt. Adapt and change. Like, hey,
and welcome in new stimuli. You know, if you're more intelligent, I think you can adapt to new stimuli with a facile ease that perhaps less intelligent people won't.
Oh, gentle citizens, gentle concerned citizens. You should see what happens with the two of us when we need to like move when we record. It's not neither one of us. It's like when you feed a dog 30 minutes late. when we need to change the time that we record, listen, is either one of us doing anything? No, but we don't record at that time. It doesn't matter if we're not doing anything. That's not when we record.
That's right.
That's not when we record.
Compartmentalize it there.
Can't record at different time. Not time. And it's both of us. It's not one of us. It's literally like when I'm 20 minutes late feeding my dog, or like when we come inside from a walk and I forget to give him a treat, and I because my mind's on something else and I go about other things, and I look over and it's 10 minutes later and he's still just standing in the same position, and he's just like, what the actual living fuck, man? We do this. This is what we do right now. What is absolutely wrong with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be able to roll with it. Right. And I think that's a thing, is like, I keep, all we can do is relate things back to our own personal experiences. But I've been on big projects or big shoots and things like that where something changes, and the person who's able to just go like, yeah, fuck it, we can't do it that way anymore. Or you hear stories about some of some of my favorite directors, or artists or whatever, like where it's like, one of my favorite things is like Taika Waititi, when he's like working on a Marvel movie, he's like, yeah, man, you just say yes to everything they ask, and then you start making your movie. And when they come in and they go, hey man, you got to change it and do this now, you just got to go, all right. And it's about figuring out how to make that thing. You don't get to say no.
Right.
It's simply like, hey, this has changed. All right, well, how do we make it work? And not only how do we make it work, but how do we make it work in a way that makes this better? There's no opportunity to use the old thing anymore. The old thing has been taken. It's gone. Yeah. How do we do this new thing that we didn't expect and just accept it? And not only like do it, but make it better than the old thing. Because if we got to do it, there's no reason to do it unless it's better than the old thing.
Right. Openness.
Yeah. Conscientiousness, though, I will say, I do wish I was more conscientious. We talk about this all the time. I think you are definitely a more conscientious person than I am. I don't. Neither one of us would describe ourselves as particularly orderly, but I think there is, when you think about conscientiousness as self-regulation, you do that way better than I do.
Perhaps. Yeah. I think I could certainly get better at it too. But I do think that that's part of my thing, is like imposing rules on myself and forcing myself to do certain things. I think I lean that direction, certainly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about extroversion, because a lot of people would think that extroversion, which they describe as a measure of sociality and enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you were on the internet before the big autism and ADHD self diagnosis of the last few years, before it was ADHD and autism, boy, oh boy, were we really obsessed with whether we were extroverts or introverts. Do you remember when the internet was like entirely about that? And then like how to treat an extrovert and how to treat an introvert, and how to treat an extroverted introvert, you are. And how to treat an introverted extrovert.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Well, extroversion, the broad big five extroversion heading only has a negligible relationship to intelligence overall. So it does tend to correlate with more intelligent people, but only negligibly. It's not the huge, not like conscientiousness and openness, but there are facets of extroversion that are more strongly correlated. One of them is activity. So if you do more stuff, you get out, if you're extroverted in the sense that you are doing more things, you tend to be more intelligent.
Sure. Got to take our stupid little mental health walks.
Yeah. But the small negative relationship to extroversion is being social. Your sociability had some negative relationship with cognitive abilities.
I knew it. Vindication. Vindication.
So, I am so smart to stay in my little room and not talk to anybody and not reply to emails.
Fucking
that's
people
me being smart.
All you fucking people with friends doing things with your friends.
The things doing smart.
Oh no,
doing the things
are great. With friends, bad. I knew it. Oh, I like to talk to people, and I think my community is important. Get absolutely fucked. You know who else thinks their community is important? The Minions, and they're stupid. The Minions are the dumbest people.
Listen to this. Neuroticism.
Now, neuroticism is something that we have, I believe, at least for the last 200 years in arts and creativity and popular culture, we celebrate neuroticism as being connected to intelligence. So
Moody genius.
The moody genius, the Oscar Wilde who comes in and has to hold court, all of this shit. Tell me, Jeff, the hard drives that they retrieved from the Himalayas, what did they say?
Well, higher levels of neuroticism predicted lower levels of intelligence.
Absolutely get fucked.
It says weakly, but it did predict lower levels of intelligence. And it says the uneven temper and depression facets were the strongest predictors of decreased intelligence.
The enfant terrible is stupid.
It turns out that might not be, that might not be a thing that we should celebrate anymore. Wow. If you're kind of being a dick, let's maybe think that you're not that smart.
It turns out that being a toxic person doesn't make that person intelligent. That's so
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff. Wow. Who would have known? Who could have ever known that simply indulging a horrible person doesn't mean that you're helping a genius with their process? Wow.
If you have a temper tantrum, that's not because everyone around you is an idiot. It's because you're an idiot.
I love it. I love to hear. I wish I had a button for this podcast that played the wow sound that the little bird child from Tears of the Kingdom makes when he gives you the glide. The wow with the star sprite, beep 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 beep. Oh, if I could play that right now, I would.
I thought you were doing Owen Wilson. Wow.
Oh, my Owen Wilson.
Man,
no, so the kid. All right, listen. Here we go. The kid from Tears of the Kingdom, the bird child, is wow, and Owen Wilson is wow.
yeah, no fair.
Wow,
yeah, that's accurate.
Oh wow,
I
that's a really big dog. Oh wow, look at the size of that dog. Most dogs aren't that big. Wow.
Wow, man.
Yeah, and then you go a little further, and it's the woman from who wants to have a hot dog real bad. The mom from American Pie. Makes me want a hot dog real bad.
All right, so agreeableness is our last one. Agreeableness, which is getting along with others, had the weakest correlation with intelligence.
This is one that we consider to be, I think, Well, this is interesting because this one is, I think, drawn along gendered lines. I think a man who is agreeable in society is considered dumber than a man who is disagreeable. It's back to that enfant terrible thing, standing your ground, saying your piece. And I think women who are agreeable are seen at least as more smart, and women who are disagreeable, women who argue, are seen as dumber. But agreeableness is seen differently between the two genders, which I think is interesting. A woman, other studies have found that a woman simply speaking their mind in a meeting is seen as disagreeable.
Right.
Whereas a man speaking their mind in a meeting is usually found as just being, kind of smart and standing your ground. So I think it's very interesting. I'm wondering what they found about agreeableness, and I'm sure they did not. I don't know if they broke it down and talked about their methodology there in terms of figuring out what agreeableness meant. Because some of these studies, like 20, 30-year-old studies, I wonder if they found agreeableness different between genders and groups of people, like races and things.
That's the thing, that there's no distinction made at this. This is a macro study of just, these big ideas. There's no distinction made for culture, for gender, for age. It's just throw all the data into a big pot and see what happens.
Oh, and that's really interesting.
Well, I'm sure they're going to continue to break it down over time. This is just the first. They've uploaded all of their major data into the Open Science database.
Yeah. I saw the chart. It's great. It's a lot of spaghetti.
Anybody can go in there and just have just a wealth of information from that chart. No, there's more than just the chart. There's literally all their source material, everything that they compiled, they've made open source.
Okay.
So anybody else can dig into this.
So these are raw numbers. These are raw
numbers.
Okay.
Raw numbers.
So according to raw numbers. It's still
interesting. Yeah. And obviously you'll have to make, there is some nuance lost here because you don't have that kind of granular description of everything. But I do think it's still interesting just on a macro level to see how these relate. So they talk about agreeableness being the weakest correlation to intelligence, but compassion and interpersonal sensitivity, which are facets of agreeableness, were moderately strong predictors of general mental ability. But politeness was negatively associated with cognitive ability.
I knew it. I knew it. Have you ever watched somebody? And this, I'm not an internet debate culture bro, but have you ever watched somebody who's having a conversation and is just clearly out of their depth? And the first thing they do is immediately go to, well, you're being mean about it.
Impolite.
You're being impolite about it. Yeah, I don't need to be polite in every single thing I say. Some statements can just be neutral statements of a fact, and they don't need to be polite. I'm sorry. There, I was polite. I said I was sorry. No, but a politeness. I don't know. I think that's interesting. Do you think there's something to politeness? Also, people who. So when I think I've told this story a couple times on the podcast, but when I went to France, I'd studied French for years. And when I went to France, I would try to speak French, but when I felt out of my depth, or I felt like there was something I couldn't say, in moments where I felt like my intelligence was failing me, I thought it was interesting because my brain immediately switched back to English, and not just switched back to English, but was doing a lot of pleases and thank yous. Like I immediately became polite because I was just kind of like, I wonder if there's a personality thing of, I feel out of my depth. I feel like I might be holding this conversation back, or my idea might not be great. And so I am going to apologize. I am going to be more polite to people and kinder to people right now in this moment because I feel like I'm not pulling my weight.
Like a status indicator.
Yeah. That's like another thing, like in theater, right? They always tell you if you're going to play a low status character, come out very polite. And that's how
being obsequious almost. Yeah. I think that's interesting. It's interesting to me too, that they separate out compassion and interpersonal sensitivity from politeness. Like, I feel like there's some overlap, because I feel like if you're compassionate, you tend to be
that is interesting,
considerate and polite, you know.
But do you think? But I also think in particularly now that a lot of conversations are happening based over text and in immediate forums, you know, like on social media and stuff like this, I think politeness and signals of politeness have come to almost be seen as the same thing as compassion and sensitivity, because it's one of the only ways you can express those things very quickly. And so when somebody isn't super polite, when somebody doesn't have their pleases and their thank yous in a tweet or in a status update or in a comment, we're like, oh, that person's being mean. When they're not, they're just not being polite. And I think we've sort of pushed those two things together quite a bit with the way that we communicate lately.
I think that's right. And I also think that, you know, I keep relating everything back to this openness idea, which I think is so powerful. And I think sometimes, and perhaps often, politeness can be a mask for something else. You know, you can be it's not open, right? It's not direct.
Oh, I grew up in the South where it's bless your heart.
Right.
Bless your heart. Oh,
get
sweet.
Fucked.
Oh, sweetie, bless your heart.
Yeah.
Oh,
what they're really saying is get fucked.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Don't you have the best ideas? Aren't those the most interesting ideas I've ever heard?
Well, yes. So I think that kind of tracks for me as well. The biggest takeaway from all of this data, they said, is that the big 5 level of personality is not, there's not enough detail there to really predict anything. You got to get really into those facets, those subcategories to really understand how intelligence relates to personality.
Oh, I love to be right because I'm neurotic and I'm not smart. But I love it when I love it when it seems like I am smart. The openness going through everything is huge. And that's something that I've been trying to work on with myself, certainly over the last few years. You know, things like, and I think some of it does come with, there's a reason why we think about empathy and compassion as something that comes with age, is because it's because experiences, you learn through doing, right? And so people who are smart, I think, learn those lessons of compassion and openness faster. And learn how to empathy is, they say that empathy is one of the hardest things for children to learn, the idea of the world outside of themselves and the idea of how does it make you feel when someone takes your toy? So how do you think it makes the other person feel? Right. That's one of the hardest things to teach kids. And I think it comes with us as we become adults, because, you know, so many things that we do and so much of our society and so much of survival is trained on paying attention to yourself. And so learning those lessons and learning how to apply them to the larger world does take, certainly at least before the age of 25, 27, definitely takes a lot more intelligence than people usually have.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, we see that in social media all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just one of those things where they're like, if your prefrontal cortex isn't solidified, if you've got the jello brain still, you know, before the age of 25, that's harder for you to think about. So that's interesting. And it's also interesting when you think about like the culturally throughout history, you think of these depictions of brilliant and wise people, you know, your Solomons and your King Davids and even your Buddhas and things like that. And the people who are known and, you know, obviously like Jesus, you think about these big spiritual and leaders of men who were known. Oh, he was gentle. He was soft spoken. He spoke with compassion. He was considered, he was one of the greatest of the kings or the greatest of the emperors because the people flourished under him. And, you know, he was kind to people. And it's like, oh, this is something we've known forever.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think this reinforces a lot of a lot of, I think, useful intuitions that we've had over time
that we've sort of like, even though we know them in our day to day, we very much compartmentalize that information away and go with like our, it's like how 10 years ago on TV, everybody was the brilliant asshole detective.
Right.
Brilliant asshole detective was the thing,
Right.
like 10 years ago on TV. And it was like, we sort of have that picture right now of who the brilliant guy is, or the most brilliant guy in pop culture, the most brilliant fictional character in pop culture right now is Iron Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The neurotic Iron Man, Tony Stark type.
Yeah. Arrogant, standoffish, brash.
The Elon Musk must be the brilliant guy, right?
Yeah.
That sort of thing, where it's like, we know that the real brilliant guy is sort of the quiet, compassionate person who's willing to listen.
Yeah. Well, you started this by asking the why. And while this study doesn't go into the why, they do have some initial, this is the first step in kind of digging into this and maybe trying to pull out some reasoning behind it. But they do have some interesting theories just right off the top. And I wanted to share them with you. They said one possibility is that certain personalities are more likely to engage in cognitively enriching activities. So is it that you're smart and therefore you have this kind of personality? Or is it that you have this kind of personality and so you tend to do things that make you smarter?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Another one is that they think it's possible that if you are intelligent, life is just easier and it reduces negative emotionality and frees you up to be less cautious, more compassionate, more open. Life literally is easier for you because you can process more information at once. And so you're more open to that information coming into you. It's if it's hard for you to process information, you're more closed-minded because you're like, no, it's confusing to me. And so you literally, like, intelligence predicts the kind of personality you'll have.
Man. Yeah, that's another reason I know I'm dumb.
Yeah.
That's how I know I'm dumb, bud. Because I'm mad all the time. That's my secret, Cap. I'm dumb as hell.
There's also, they're also smart enough to admit that this is literally comparing and contrasting two huge parts of human life, your intelligence and your personality. Mm-hmm. But they're smart enough to admit there may be a third factor that influences all of this, like your wealth or your health or your regionality, your place in the world. So, they're not, they're not trying to say that, hey, this is the end all be all of knowing what correlates to what. Mm-hmm. This is just an interesting study that makes really discernible connections. We can say in general, empathetic people, happy people, open people tend to be smarter, but they also say it's bigger than just that. But they want to put this data out there, this massive effort, this 14-year effort to cobble this together, to come up with, a cohesive data set. But man, I think is useful in and of itself.
In a way, just that statement, just that definitive statement that intelligent people are happier and happier people are more intelligent. Just that statement alone is like, hey, doesn't that mean that we should be prioritizing intelligence within our society in a lot more ways and trying to proliferate that stuff in a way that we haven't been over the last 40 years when we've been cutting funding of so many things, not just schools, but arts and community centers and things like that, where it's just like, hey, we need to train intelligent people so they can be happy. We need to foster this well-being and this intelligence in people in our society, and we are spending less and less on that.
Right. Yeah. I love this final quote from Denise Ones, who says, right now, companies use information to understand and influence you. We wanted people to better understand themselves so they can identify their optimal job, friends, city, romantic partner, or anything else important to them. So they really did set out to go, hey, here's a way to leverage big data. We're open sourcing this. We want to put this out there. Here's a way to leverage big data in a way to maybe do something positive. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the fact that they're just releasing all of the data. You know, when we see studies like this, it's always like, well, you can read the paper, but to read the paper, you have to subscribe to an academic journal or, you know, find a way around it. Luckily, we find ways around it every time. But who knows how? We'll never say. Yeah. Maybe we'll tell you on the Discord. But even when you read the study, you know, so many of these studies are funded by sources where it's just like, oh, but we're keeping this data. We'll tell you the top lines of the data, and we'll show you enough to show our work. But this was funded by like Philip Morris, so we can't tell you what, you know what I mean? Or like, sorry, we can't show you. Johnson & Johnson actually funded this study about happiness, so we have to give all of that to the shampoo people.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that they're releasing all this stuff so somebody can make a better graph.
That's really what we want.
I'm going to go. One of those subreddits I follow is Data is Beautiful, and it's just people who share like really nice graphs. And I know somebody on Data is Beautiful has already reworked this graph or is working on it right now.
I hope so.
That would be lovely. What do you think about all these? What do you think about all these conclusions? All of these connections that are being drawn. Do they jive with what you've been thinking your whole life?
We know if you're listening to this, you're open-minded, compassionate, smart, sexy. Mm-hmm. I don't think sexy was one of the ones, but I'm going to add it in there.
No,
anyway.
We can infer that though from all the data.
Yeah. If you look at the chart, sexy's in there somewhere. And you know, there's another correlation between all of those people and who have all of those traits. They're on our Discord. They're patrons. They're patrons. That is, you know, we should really send our data over to Stanek and Ones because we got to get in there because this is a major personality correlation. You are smart if your personality supports this show at patreon.com/wehaveconcerns.
That's right. If you support us for $1 a month or more, you get access to the Discord to hang out with all the other smart people. And then for a little bit more every month, you start getting a little bit more like bonus episodes, bonus audio clips, bonus videos and Q&As and all kinds of wonderful stuff. Check it out at wehaveconcerns.com. It's the smart thing to do.
And sexy.